All right, welcome to your practice. This one is an Iyengar practice, and it's aimed at back pain relief. It's different, it goes a little fast, and it starts out with headstand, so bear with me. Let's get a quick sun salutation in first. Inhale, reach your arms. Exhale, forward fold. Please take your time here if you need some extra time in that forward fold before stepping or shooting back into chaturanga. Inhale, a cobra or a sphinx pose or an easy back bend, and then right into tabletop to set up for headstand. So elbows on the floor. You can start with elbow dog. We have several videos where we've went over headstand and headstand props. So if you've caught any of those, please apply any of those modifications here. We're going to be in this headstand for 20 breaths. Counting your breath as you inhale, expand your belly, and exhale, contract. That's 1. I'm probably on like 2 or 3 by now. So wherever you are, wherever you're getting into your practice, if you need to pause the video and practice your inversion for 20 breaths. And it could be using a chair, using the wall, taking elbow dog, and taking any of the modifications that you've learned from me through these videos or in person. So this class that I've put together here is definitely a class out of the Iyengar book, Light on Yoga. It's in the back, and it's his prescription for back pain. Believe it or not, this is actually a modified class. There are some crazy postures in that one, but this is exactly how he prescribed the practice for back pain relief. So just so you know, I didn't create this sequence. It did come from Iyengar, and it's definitely modified. And then wherever you are in your headstand, finding that balance, you might be getting a little tired in your shoulders, might be getting a little hot in you might be getting your temperature warm, but that's great. I just love starting out with headstand. In fact, when I was doing this practice, all I could think was, why don't I do this more often? The entire practice felt so good after this. If you're coming out of your headstand, you can always get back into it. Or if you don't quite make the 20 breaths, that's fine. It's something to work toward. Maybe you can work up to that. Make sure to keep pushing down into your wrists, push down into your elbows, press up with your legs, especially at this point in the headstand. We're going to transition into a half fold here in just a moment. So get that foundation set up first, and then if you're able to practice the half fold or the Dandasana and headstand, you're going to swish your hips back over your head and then straighten out your legs halfway so you can see your toes in your line of vision. And here, just 10 breaths. And you could use a chair here or a wall with your feet on the wall. You'd be looking at the wall. Again, if you need to pause the video and then situate yourself at the wall, get into this pose, count 10 breaths, and then come back and we'll join back up. So especially here, you might be feeling a little shaky, a little wobbly. Keep pressing down into those elbows. Keep your core engaged, even as you're pumping that breath in and out with your belly. Ujjayi breath is a great tool in a practice like this. It keeps your mind focused. So if you're practicing that hushing sound in your throat as you exhale, maybe even as you inhale. All right, and then let your feet come down to the floor and sit in child's pose for just about 5 to 8 breaths. Maybe sighing out of your mouth here just to give yourself a little let go, right? Relaxing your shoulders here. The next pose is going to be shoulder stand. So let your shoulders just simply fall back and relax. Let your arms rest beside your feet. Let your forehead rest. And if you need longer here, again, please pause the video and catch up in a moment. We're going to situate into shoulder stand. So you're just going to move to a reclining position before jumping or rolling up into shoulder stand too quickly. And take a moment on your back in Tadasana on your back, right? So we're just lying here and feeling your body in a neutral position. And then with your palms on the floor, you can roll yourself up into shoulder stand if you like to use props here. Again, in many of my classes, I went over prop usage. So you could use a chair for shoulder stand or a couple blankets under your shoulders. If you're using the blankets go from your shoulder to your elbow, and head and neck are not on the blanket. In shoulder stand, press your feet up to the ceiling. You could also opt for legs in the air with a couple blocks under your hips. You're still actively pressing your feet up to the ceiling though. In this position, Salam Sarvangasana, shoulder stand, try to get your elbows closer and your hands walk up your back. Your elbows and your shoulders both press into the floor, so there's not a bunch of weight and pressure in your neck and head. And here it's 10 breaths. So if you weren't counting, just imagine what 10 breaths would be. Just think about it, guesstimate, and then lower your feet overhead into plow pose, and then 10 breaths here. If your feet are touching the floor in plow pose, you can interlace your fingers behind your back and press your elbows and wrists down into the floor. Maintain that press and that connection to the floor of your shoulders. So you're really pressing down into the floor with your shoulders. Belly is engaged. It's a forward fold. It's a reclining forward fold. So your hips are flexed. So you are using the front of those hip flexors. Squeeze your thighs, press your toes into the floor. That'll help put some space between your chin and your chest. Even though your chest is moving towards your chin, you don't want your throat to get clogged up there. So able to breathe here, right? It's a big goal. After 10 breaths in Halasana, plow, you're going to bend your knees around your ears into Karnapidasana, quiet pose. And you can always take your hands to your back at any point in time if having the hands interlaced on the floor is just not feeling stable. And then keep squeezing your knees down towards your ears. Be careful here not to squeeze too much. You might get a belly cramp. Sometimes that happens. It's very common. So keep pressing down into your shoulders and not your head. All right, and then to roll out of this, re-straighten your legs. Take your legs all the way down to the floor. You can lie here for just a moment, uncurl, and then when you're ready, we'll come up to a standing forward fold. So you can push up through seated if you need to take a moment just to sit, that's fine. But your feet are going to come to the floor, and then you're going to push right up into a standing forward fold, Uttanasana. Big breath here, and then on your next inhale, reach up, Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, Samastitihi. So next is the standing poses. Turn and face one side of your mat and open your legs out wide in a Prasarita, wide leg stance. Turn your right toes out 90 and your left toes in about 30. Trikonasana, triangle pose. Right hand to your right shin, left hand up to the ceiling. Again, if you're using a chair block, situate that prop. And just 8 breaths for these standing postures. And all of our breaths are going to be different. So maybe it's 6 to 8 breaths. Press back through your left heel here. Squeeze your right thigh. Lengthen your torso by using the muscles on your spine. Inhale to rise, up, and then switch the footing. Left foot turns out 90, right toes in 30, and then exhale, left hand to your left shin. Right hand stretches up to the ceiling. You can take your gaze up to your right fingertips and try to press equally into both feet, so even effort in both feet. And then again, you're stretching your torso away using the muscles attached to your back. Breathing around the core engagement, so the core engagement isn't so strong that you can't fully breathe with your diaphragm. Inhale to lift, back upright. All right, so we'll take this into revolved triangle next. So I situate my feet, right toes turn again forward 90, the left toes a little sharper, so about 45, 60-ish degrees. Left hand can come down to the floor on the outside of your right foot, either on a chair or on a block or two, or on the floor. And then reach your right arm up, press down into both feet, squeeze both thighs. And instead of trying to pull one hip back or one hip forward, just try to send both of those sit bones straight to the back of the room. Good. Inhale to come back up. That posture, my breath is always faster, so 8 breaths goes a lot quicker for me. If you're still there, awesome, you rock. Go for it. And then you can come up on your inhale and turn to the second side. Left foot is the front foot. Right foot is the back foot. Right toes are angled and sharp. Left toe is straight forward. Right hand to the outside of your left foot, and really press down into your right leg. So the right thigh presses down into your right heel. And then again, just try to send both sit bones straight back and lift your low belly button in towards the spine. You can gaze up to your left hand, and then when you come up, turn your gaze down to the floor to help with that transition, and a standing wide leg again. All right, so prep for the third posture here. We'll move into Warrior Two. You can situate your feet a little farther apart. They were probably closer for that triangle, revolve triangle. Looking right out over your right fingertips once you get your arms reached up. So your arms are abducted to shoulder height. You're sitting down evenly in both hips. So you're going to feel a shift in your hips. One hip's going to be lower, so the right hip probably, if your feet aren't far enough apart. Breathe from your belly. Open your chest through your shoulders and soften your face and soften your upper neck and shoulder area, the back area. And then after your 8 breaths, lift and turn to the second side, turning those right toes in. So the right toes don't line up with the edge of your mat. They actually point at an angle. And then left knee bends in the direction of your second left toe. Both sit bones dropping evenly. Pressing evenly into both feet. So that's something to always consider in these postures where the legs are doing 2 different things. The left leg is bent, the right leg is straight. The left hip is in flexion, the right hip is in extension. So really press equally into both feet because it's easy to let one do more work than the other. All right, and then come back up to that wide leg preparatory position. Turn your right toes now to face out. We're going to turn to the right side again. Same setup for Warrior Two, except right into side angle, Uttita Parshva Konasana. Right knee, try not to let it turn in to the left. So actually push your right knee into your arm. Your arm is behind you on the floor or on a block or on a chair. Really lift the inner left thigh, open your left ribs, and look up to that left hand as it stretches straight overhead, continuing a nice straight diagonal line from your back heel. Count your 8 breaths here. And again, if you're not moving at the same pace as me, that's fine. If the video is in your eyesight, in your line of vision, just move ahead or catch up when you're ready. Okay, to the second side. Left foot is the front foot, right foot is the back foot. You're going to bend your left knee and let your left hand come down to the floor. Take it to the floor or block or the chair. Right arm is stretching overhead and pull your gaze up. So try not to look up with your throat, look up with your eyes, and then lean back with your heart so that your back shoulder blades are in line with your back hips. Keep your left knee from collapsing in to the big toe side of your foot. Instead, it squeezes to the pinky toe side of your foot. And then inhale, come up to that preparatory position, that starting point, that wide leg position. All right, Warrior One, next posture. So again, you're going to turn your right toes, bend your right knee, press back with your left heel, lift your chest up. You can take your gaze up. You can keep your gaze forward, whatever's better for your neck. But here, really press into that right foot. And then the left leg, don't forget about the left leg. So both legs, the thighs are engaged here and pressing down through the feet from your thighs. Almost like you just break apart that mat. And again, count your 8 breaths here. And when you finished 8, straighten out that right leg and turn to the left side. Bend your left knee. So I like this transitioning back and forth from left to right. It builds so much strength in your ankles and your thighs, and thigh quad strength. Really supportive for your low back. Of course, the strength in your legs and your ankles affect your back. Most pain happens from the bottom up, or most issues are caused from the bottom up, right? And this is really good for balance too. All right, continue your counting of your breath in Warrior One on your left side. Strong right leg, strong left leg. And then the strong back muscles here to lift your chest and open your heart in this tiny little back bend. And when you finish your 8 rounds, press to that wide leg standing starting point. Again, one more standing pose here. Parsvottanasana, turn to your right, so your right toes point forward, left foot angles in, again sharp, just like we did Trikonasana, the revolved triangle. For pyramid Parsvottanasana, you can take your hands behind in reverse prayer, or you can grab opposite wrists or elbows or forearms, and then lengthen down over your right leg. Keep pressing back through your left heel, and keep the right hip lifted, so the right hip likes to collapse here. Use your back muscles here to kind of pull up a little bit with your upper back so that your upper back isn't dropping down and pulling on your low back. So we want to relieve back pain, not make it worse. And then again, as you're counting your breath, just notice notice the meditation, the meditative quality of that, counting the breath. It's pretty cool. Inhale, come up, turn to the left, situate your feet, press into your palms. So right now the reverse prayer might be getting a little fatigued. Your wrist might be getting tired. So try to really push into your palms with your biceps. So your arms aren't collapsing, your elbows aren't dropping down to the floor. And then stretch your chest forward over your toes. Using the counting method of your breathing awareness to focus your mind and hopefully connect even more to your body, to the sensations in your body. Strong, both feet really strong, especially in this posture. It can be a bit of a balancing challenge. And then as you finish your 8th breath, inhale, come up to stand. And now you can let go of your reverse prayer and then step to the top of your mat in Tadasana, mountain pose. And your next inhale, reach your arms up, Urdhva Hastasana. And exhale, forward fold, Uttanasana. You can step back into plank or you can shoot back to Chaturanga. You can skip this Chaturanga Vinyasa if you'd like. Inhale, upward facing dog if you're moving. Exhale, come up and back into a brief downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. All right, then we're going to come to seated. So you can kneel and sit back over your feet, or you can jump through to seated. And then lie down onto your back. We're going to get into a couple reclining positions. So the first one is Jatara Parivartanasana. So it's the revolved abdominal twist or revolved abdominal stretch. So I'm going to take my left hand to my right foot. My right leg is straight. You're welcome to bend your right knee. Try to, though, if you can, have the right leg straight and the left leg straight, and then put maybe a strap on your right foot or a tie or something that you've got, an extension, a TheraBand or anything. But your left leg is very strong. It's pressing like you're standing on the floor. So this is as if you were standing in the middle of the room, taking this standing twisted balance. Right arm is stretching out towards the right side of the room. And breathe from your belly. 8 rounds of breath here. Keep pushing into your left hand, but keep pulling your shoulder blades back into the rib cage. And then lift your foot back up with an inhale. Switch hand to foot. So now it's same side, hand to foot, right hand, left, right hand, right foot. Left hand comes down your left thigh. Curl up. Take your nose or chin to your shin. Use your right hand. Elbow can bend out to the side to assist pulling your shin to your nose or chin. And keep curling into this. Left leg is active, pressing forward. Left hand stretches down towards your left knee. Your full 8 rounds of breath here, and then slowly release. Now we're going to move into the B version here. So this is Supta Padangusthasana. We just did A. Now this is B. So the right foot comes out to the side without lifting your left hip up. Keep your left hand on your hip to push it down. And you can always take your gaze over your left side or over off to the left shoulder. Press out through your right foot, press down through your left foot, and feel that diagonal stretch there. And you could still use the strap here or the belt on your foot. And then inhale, push back up to the ceiling with your right foot. Release your hand and just let your right leg come down nice and slow with controlled movement. Right leg is straight as it comes down. Resituate if you need. Left leg up. Right hand to your left foot. So this is a cross diagonal. And then if you need a belt or a strap here, And then that right leg is really strong and pushing forward as you roll over to your right hip. Left hand is going to come up a shoulder height. So my left arm was down too low. I could feel it pulling down on my left back muscle. So I lifted it up there. There we go. So now you can see there's this big stretch from left hip to left hand, as well as down, between the 2 feet, between the legs even. Outer IT band is getting a great stretch here. This is really going to help with back pain. So keep pressing through your right hand, right foot. Don't let your hip fall over too much. You want some resistance with your back muscles, not too much, because you don't want to jam your left shoulder down to the floor, but your left arm is active. All right, come back up to the ceiling with your left leg and switch hands. So left hand, left foot. Supta Padangusthasana here. This is A version. Chin to shin, elbow can come out. That's going to open up a little bit more. Elbow can also come back into your shin. It just depends on what feels better for your shoulder mobility, just as long as you're not crunching up into like a little turtle shape here. Right hand stretches down to your right foot stretches away from your right hand. Breathe even with this crunch. It's kind of harder to breathe here with that full belly breath, but it's still a nice deep, slow breath, as slow as it can be within reason. And then slowly lower down so we can take B variation. So now your foot's going to come out to the side without letting your right hip lift. Keep your right hand on your hip to remind it to push down, and keep pressing forward with your right foot and out towards the side of the room with your left foot. And then you can look out over your right shoulder. Try to keep both sets of ribs even on the floor and both shoulder blades even on the floor. And both sides of your glutes even on the floor. All right, get your 8 rounds in here, and then when you're ready, inhale, you're going to take your left leg back up to the ceiling. Release your left foot and lower your left leg down with control. All right, and then come up to seated. And then we're going to move into some forward folds here. So I'm going to turn and face you so you can see the setup. Janu Shirshasana is the first one. My right foot's going to come up inside my left thigh. Right knee is not going to open up out to the side. The right knee is going to press forward and down into the floor. And then exhale out over your left leg if you need blankets or props to situate this posture in with more comfort. If this is hurting your back, we need to modify. So if you need something under the right knee, or if you need something under your sit bones, or if you need something to fold out onto like a chair seat, please modify. Keep pressing out through your left leg though. And notice that the breath can be slower in this posture. That is definitely to be expected, and that is okay to allow that to happen. So as you could see, the revolved triangle went quicker than this posture because breathing is just going to be different in different poses, and that's absolutely fine. The whole point of that is to listen to what the breath is telling you. Right? Inhale, lift up. And then we're going to move this into revolved Janu Shirshasana, Parit Janu Shirshasana. So I'm opening my left leg out to the side. Now I'm letting my right knee open out slightly. And then I'm going to turn out over my left thigh. I'm going to take the little bit more of a traditional bind here. If I can remember, it's been a while since I've done it. Okay, yeah. So my bottom arm is going to grab my top arm on the outside of my foot. And then I'm going to roll under the right side. So some things you could do here, a block behind or inside of your left leg, and use your elbow on the block or your head on the block. Again, I've broken this down before in other classes, so refer to any of those modifications to enjoy this. Press out with your right knee, press out with your left foot, and then really lengthen your left side. It can cramp here a little bit. After your 8 breaths, inhale, come up, and then we're going to switch sides. Janu Shirshasana, second side. So now the right leg is straight, left foot up inside your right thigh. And then again, you're not going to let your left knee open out to the side. You're going to push your left knee forward like you were taking tree pose. And then exhale, fold out over your right leg. So if your left knee needs padded, put something underneath it so that you've got something to push into. Because I want you should feel balanced here, even in this asymmetrical posture. And then here, noticing what the breath is telling you. This is an easier posture. I could stay here longer. This is a more calming posture. As I was saying before, that's the whole point. Listen to what the breath is telling you. And then you know what postures to use when you need a calming moment or when you need some energy. You know what postures to use. Keep pressing out through your right foot and then inhale, lift up. So you've got a strong foundation to lift up onto. And then your right leg opens up out to the side. Left knee opens up to the opposite side. So it's almost like a wide angle shape here with one knee bent. And then I'm going to lean out over my right leg with my right side. My left hand is going to go up and over, and my right hand is going to come under and grab my left wrist on the outside of my right foot. And then roll your left ribs open. Again, try to lengthen your bottom waist here. So the right side, it tends to cramp up in this pose. So try to lengthen it out towards your right toes. Keep pressing away with your left knee and hip so that you don't lift. And again, those smooth 8 rounds of breath here. Take your time. And then when you're ready, inhale, come back up to seated. And then we're going to move into another forward fold. Paschimottanasana, the straight leg seated position of the forward fold. Staff pose is a fine place to sit for a moment just to get your hips to realign. And then when you're ready, exhale, fold out over your legs. Again, I did a tutorial on forward folds, so I broke down both of these postures. If you need any assistance with these postures, go back and watch that class that is called Forward Fold and Twist. All right, and then stretch your chest towards your toes, and then try not to let your feet sickle in here. Push through your big toe mounds, and then pull back with your outer pinky toe mounds. Press your sit bones back behind you, and let your back round out to its natural shape. So that mid back is going to have more rounding than the low back and the upper back. Eight nice, slow, easy breaths here. And then on your next inhale, lift up to seated. All right, we're going to move this into one more forward fold. This is Urdhva Paschimottanasana, balancing on your sit bones, cupping your palms with your hands. You're welcome to use a strap here on your feet. You're looking up to your feet. You could also use a wall here. You could take your back to the wall, or you could take your feet to the wall. Pull up with your chest, so there's going to be a rounding. This is a forward fold. Not looking for a straight back here. And these were the longest 8 breaths of my life, it felt like. If you wobble, okay, that's fine. You're human. Nothing wrong with that. And then come back down to staff pose when you're finished with that one. Another forward fold here, Marichyasana A version. So this is the pose dedicated to the sage Marichya. This is the A version. So you're going to wrap around the front of your right shin. Your right heel is going to come up to your right sit bone. You need a lot of space between your right foot and your left leg. And then you're going to bind around. You can use a belt to bind. Fold out over your left leg. So your right foot is flat on the floor. You can't really see it here, but my right foot is flat on the floor. My right sit bone is lifted. It's going to have to lift. You're pulling your right knee back and trying to create a garland style squat on the right side. Inhale up. And then we'll move this into Marichyasana C. So this is the third phase of Marichya pose. So now I'm going to bind in that exact same setup. So I'm going to wrap around with my left arm and bind. So my tendency is to fall back into my right hip. This side is really hard for me. I'm not quite sure why. It's always been the case. So I'm going to try to get my right hip forward. There we go. So I'm going to try. There we go. So I don't know if you could see that. I can't even explain it. Basically what was going on was my head. I was leaning back to the right too much on a diagonal, and my right sit bone was collapsing down to the floor. So instead I needed to push down into my left sit bone and really press my chest up to the ceiling. And I think that the reason why that's so hard for me is because I'm more flexible in my right side and I could drop down. All right, just a moment here in staff pose then. And then we'll move on to Marichiasan A, back to the first variation on the second side. Left foot is up to my sit bone. I've got space between thigh and foot, binding around behind, and then folding out over the right shin. And again, your left sit bone's going to come up. The goal here is not to plant those sit bones down, it's actually to pull your left knee back and eventually scoot your left heel back so far it's under your sit bone. So this is one of those crazy ankle flexibility postures, like garland pose or Pashasana noose pose. 8 breaths in each variation. Inhale, lift up when you're ready after you've counted your eighth breath. And then we're going to scooch in for the twist. So you can see I'm pushing my left knee across to the right leg, and that's fine to do. Otherwise, how are you going to get the bind? And then wrap your right arm around the outside of your left leg, around the front of your shin with your right forearm, and then behind your back with your left hand so that the right hand can catch your left fingers or wrist. And then here, remember to push down into that right sit bone so you can lift your head up over your spine and not lean on the diagonal. You can look out over your left shoulder for extra challenge. Honestly, sometimes I feel more stretch when I look forward. So consider that the gaze, doesn't have to be over the one way. All right, release that back to staff pose. Catch your breath if you need here. And then we're going to move into a twist, Ardha Matsyendrasana, half Lord of the Fishes. So I'm going to turn and face you so you can see what I'm doing here. So that left heel is going to wrap up around the right hip, and then my right foot is going to hook on the top of the knee. So I'm actually going to take this more classical variation. This is really challenging for me. I'm actually sitting on the heel, so that heel moves from the outer hip to your butt, and then you're going to hug or hook, and I'm taking this classic traditional version here with the hand coming inside the foot. So my left arm is hooking on the outside of my right knee and hooking around to the inside of the foot. Right hand is behind on the floor for me because if I take my right hand up, I wobble, and you'll see I'm going to try it and I'm going to fall. But try it and see. There's nothing wrong with falling. You're not that high off the ground. You're just a foot width off the ground. But eventually you would take your right hand around and hook your left thigh. So if you're trying that balance, go for it. So I lifted my hand and got my hook, and then I fall. That's okay. All right, just a moment in staff pose before the second side. So if you're still in that pose, go ahead and release it. Take a moment to unwind and then hook your left foot over your right knee. Right heel is up on the outside of your left hip, or sit on the heel right up in the perineum. Push down into your left foot. So that's another thing for the balance. And you might want to block here just to have your hand back on. So this will help lift you up to the height of sitting on your heel. So it's about 4 inches. And I turned my end up a little higher so that I could push my back open. Ooh. Sometimes getting the balance is so hard, but really it's a matter of squeezing up through the low belly, squeezing up through the low pelvic floor, and then pushing down into that left foot. Almost like you can squeeze your right heel up into your butt and then squeeze your heel with your butt. And then if you're feeling pretty stable in your balance, you could again try to take that left hand around, or take it off the floor even, and around to the right hip. If you wobble, you wobble. Let it be. It is what it is. But count those breaths. When you finish 8, come back out of that, unwrap your legs, and let that go. And then we'll come into garland pose, Malasana. So situate yourself on your feet with your feet both pointing straight forward. Get your feet as close together as you can. And then your knees are going to wing open, butterfly open, so you can lean down inside your thighs with your ribs. You can keep your hands on the floor behind you, or you can start to take them up around your legs to your back. So your knees are in the backs of your armpits and your forehead towards the floor. If you need something under your heels, put a blanket or an extra mat under your heels. And then breathe here. This is such a good posture for back pain, for back relief, for stretching your back, for strengthening your core. All right, and then on your 8th breath, finish that up and inhale, come out of that. And then we'll take downward facing dog for 10 breaths. So we're going back to 10 counts. So find a position in downward facing dog that you can be comfortably still in for 10 breaths, other than moving your hands if your hands are sliding away like mine are. And then lift up from your belly, lengthen out your low back, squeeze those thighs. You can close your eyes down here and just really focus on the breath. Imagine you can see the path of your breath, you can visualize it. You might even feel with each breath there's there's like a gentle pulsation or a flow happening in your body, even in the stillness of this posture. You can feel your back expand, you can feel your back lift, and then on the exhale, you can feel a settling in the shoulders, maybe a softening and a little sense of deepening. All right. And then after your 10th breath, we'll come to kneeling. Ustrasana, camel pose is next. Pad up your knees if you need. I was having a massive foot retaliation here. My arches were cramping, so I'm going to grab a blanket and put it under my ankles. So set yourself up here. Maybe you need a chair behind you. Maybe you need blocks on either side of your feet. Or if you like to start in the seated version of Ustrasana. Finally was like the stupid foot. What the hell? So I'm taking a blanket. I'm going to roll it up. Opening it up so that it's not a super thick roll. I just need enough to support my ankles because my feet were arching from trying to push my ankles down to the floor. There was no support there, so the arches were trying to do too much work. That is why your muscles cramp, because it's smaller muscles doing more work than they're meant to do. As soon as I put that blanket under my ankles, the cramp went away. So something to keep in mind if you're experiencing foot cramps in child's pose or anything like that. All right, and then into Ustrasana, you can have hands on your heels or hands on blocks. So you're pressing your thigh bones forward, not necessarily your hips. You don't want to jam your hips forward, it'll pinch your low back. Instead, you want to feel a nice smooth curve from knees, up thighs, up hip, up belly, up chest, up through throat, up through chin. So you can see it's the front line shape, not the back line shape that you're looking for. Good, and then inhale, lift up after 8 breaths. And then we'll come to the belly for another back bend. So if you need a moment in tabletop, just to resituate your spine, or come down to your belly and rest on your forehead for a moment. We'll start with the locust pose, Shalabhasana. Interlace your hands behind your back. Lift your feet, lift your chest, lift your throat. Lift your thumbs off your sacrum. You don't have to interlace your fingers. You can definitely keep your arms open, or if you can squeeze a block between your hands behind you, that's pretty cool. Try to get your feet together, so squeeze your big toes together and squeeze your glutes and your hamstrings to straighten out your legs. And then, or to lift your legs rather, and then squeeze your thighs to straighten out your legs. And after 8 breaths there, slowly lower down. Catch a breather here. And then the second posture we move into is bow pose, Dhanurasana. So take as long as you need before moving into this next back bend. Catch your feet or your ankles and press your feet up to the ceiling and then press your shins back. So again, you're using your glutes and your hamstrings to lift your legs up off the floor, and then you're using your thigh muscles to press your feet away from your head. Then that's going to pull your chest up. And if you need your feet to come a little farther apart, please do so here. All right, and then lower down after 8 rounds of breath. Again, rest on your forehead. Give your back a moment to relax. Here you can feel your belly moving into the floor when you breathe. It's a pretty cool sensation. I love that. All right, and then we'll move on. So we're going to come up into a seated so that you can lie back onto your back. One more back bend here. If you know that Urdhva Dhanurasana is not okay for your body, please don't do it. Visit bridge pose, or again, I've broken down this posture with many modifications. So use a chair for a back bend or blocks. I'm going to move into Urdhva Dhanurasana, upward bow. So I'm taking my heels in as close to my glutes as possible. I'm coming to my head first so I can test my back out. And then I lift my heels first because I've been having massive back issues. and then press the heels down. Again, my stupid foot was cramping, so I had to lift up my toes. I don't want you to see that and think that's something that you should be doing in this posture. I just had to do that to get out of the toe cramp. Try to press your wrists back over, or your shoulders back over your wrists, but within reason. If you push them back too far, you're going to pinch nerves. I've experienced that. It's not worth it. That pose may not be 8 breaths. Take what you can get. I took like 4 and I was like, done. And then come down and just take a moment in constructive rest to let your back relax. So it's feet on the floor, knees up to the ceiling. Stay there as long as you like, and then move into Shavasana and count 20 rounds of breath here. When you get to 20, if you want 30, take 30. And then when you get to 30, maybe you want 10 more and take 40. And just keep going in 10 breath increments until you feel like you've given yourself enough time to rest and let your body recover from this practice. And really focus on the breath shape, pattern, and movement. And noticing how your body reacts to the breath. In addition to that, notice how the practice affected your body. What are you feeling? Where's the sensation at? Where are the obvious sensations? Hopefully this practice left you feeling as grounded and as good as it left me feeling. I love this practice. I love Iyengar practices like this. So really just go in there and notice the meditative quality of the practice and the connection that you now have to your breath and your body. And I'll leave you to continue counting your breath. Thanks, yogis, for practicing with me. As always, when you finish your practice, take a moment to bow to you and tell yourself thank you.